Welcome to the deep dive. You ready to dive into Bitcoin?
Let's do it.
We're going to try to answer this big question that's been floating around. Is Bitcoin the future of money? We've got some sources to help us out here. A Wikipedia article, a price forecast article, some real-time data from CoinMarketCap.
I'm seeing that.
Yeah, and a snippet focusing on blockchain technology.
Very cool.
Yeah, so what do you say we jump right in?
Let's go for it.
Okay, Bitcoin. It emerged in 2009, right?
That's right.
And it was created by this mysterious, figure, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Still a mystery to this day.
Yeah, still don't know who it is or, if it's a group of people, who knows?
Right.
But it's this idea of a decentralized digital currency. So instead of, banks and governments controlling it, it operates on this peer-to-peer network.
Yeah, like cutting out the middleman.
So instead of, trusting a bank, you're trusting a complex system of computers and algorithms.
Yeah, kind of a shift in trust.
It's a little daunting, I'll be honest.
It can seem that way at first, but the core concept is actually pretty simple.
Okay.
It's all about this digital ledger, a record of every Bitcoin transaction ever made.
Okay.
And that's the blockchain.
Blockchain.
And it's not stored in one place. It's distributed across, tons of computers all over the world.
So like a digital Google Doc, but for money, kinda?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And to add another layer of security,
Okay.
each block of transactions is linked to the one before it using cryptography. So you have this unbreakable chain.
Okay, so it's practically impossible to cheat the system then.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do new Bitcoins enter the system?
That's where mining comes in.
Okay, mining. I always hear that term, but I'm never quite sure what it actually is.
Think of it like this. Miners are the ones verifying and adding new blocks to the blockchain. They basically use powerful computers to solve really complex math problems.
Oh, wow.
And the first one to solve it gets rewarded with brand new Bitcoins.
Oh, so it's like a constant competition to solve these digital puzzles with Bitcoin as the prize.
Exactly. And here's another interesting thing. The reward for mining a block is cut in half every 210,000 blocks.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it's called halving. This ensures scarcity and controls the supply of Bitcoin, which is capped at 21 million.
So that's why it's compared to gold so often.
Yes.
Limited supply, potential for value to increase over time.
Yep.
So where do you actually store these digital coins, though?
You store them in digital wallets, but it's not as straightforward as a bank account.
Okay.
There are two main types. Hot wallets, which are connected to the internet,
Uh-huh.
and cold wallets, which are stored offline.
Okay.
Hot wallets are convenient, but potentially a little riskier because they're online.
Makes sense.
Cold wallets offer more security, but if you lose the key to your cold wallet, those Bitcoins are gone forever.
Oh, wow. So 20% of all Bitcoins are just lost because people lost their keys.
Yeah, it's a crazy statistic. It really emphasizes the need to understand how to manage your Bitcoin securely.
It's a lot of pressure to keep track of a tiny piece of code.
It is, definitely.
Okay, so we've got this limited supply, decentralized digital currency. But can you actually use Bitcoin, in the real world, to buy stuff?
That's the big question.
Okay.
And it's where things get a little more complicated. Bitcoin can be used for payments, but it's not as widely accepted as traditional methods
Right.
because of the price volatility mainly and transaction fees.
Yeah, those miners need to get paid somehow, right?
Exactly. They need to be compensated for their work verifying transactions.
So it's not quite replacing my credit card just yet then?
Not quite yet, but we are seeing some progress.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, some countries are even taking the leap and adopting Bitcoin as legal tender.
Like El Salvador, right? That was big news.
Huge news. It was a really bold experiment.
What was their goal with that?
They were aiming to boost financial inclusion and attract foreign investment.
But did it work?
It's been a mixed bag, honestly. It did attract some investment and tourism, but not every Salvadoran has access to the technology or understands how to use Bitcoin,
Right.
especially in a country with limited financial literacy.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex situation.
Yeah, it's a real-world example of the challenges and opportunities that come with Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
Okay, so El Salvador is one example. But let's not forget about Bitcoin's reputation as, a volatile investment.
You're right. It's been on a roller coaster ride lately.
Yeah. Our price forecast article mentioned a dip below $90,000.
Yeah, I'm looking at CoinMarketCap right now. It's currently at
Oh, wow.
$88,099.99 with a market cap of over $1.7 trillion.
That's insane. bigger than many countries' economies.
It really is.
But the experts still believe it could reach $100,000, right?
That's the prediction, but they're looking for signals of increased demand,
What kind of signals?
not just from individuals, but from larger institutions, too.
Like what? Give me an example.
Imagine if companies like, say, Apple or Amazon started accepting Bitcoin. Or if pension funds and hedge funds added it to their portfolios.
That would be a huge shift.
It would. It would be a sign that the financial world is starting to take Bitcoin seriously.
That makes sense. But why should, the average person care about Bitcoin?
That's the question everyone has to answer for themselves.
Yeah.
But what's so fascinating about Bitcoin is that it challenges the way things are. It forces us to rethink how money works, who controls it, what the future of finance could look like.
So it's not just about making money, it's about a potential paradigm shift.
Exactly. It's a reimagining of the financial system as we know it.
It sounds like we've only scratched the surface here.
We've only just begun.
There's so much more to explore.
Absolutely.
Let's take a break and come back to dive even deeper.
Sounds good to me. Welcome back to our deep dive on Bitcoin.
So before we went on that little break, we were talking about how Bitcoin could change, everything about finance,
Yeah, total revolution.
And we touched on how El Salvador adopted it, remember?
Right.
It really makes you think, is this really a currency or is it just something for, tech people to invest in?
It's a great question. I mean, is it digital gold? A currency?
Yeah.
An investment?
Yeah.
Or, maybe all of the above.
Right.
It's hard to say, and that's what makes it so interesting to talk about.
Totally. Okay, so let's go back to those real-world applications we were discussing earlier. Remember that price forecast article?
Yeah.
It suggested that Bitcoin needs more demand to hit that, $100,000 mark. So what would that actually look like in real life?
Well, imagine being able to use Bitcoin for, everyday stuff, seamlessly.
Okay.
Paying for coffee, groceries, booking flights,
Yeah.
even getting your salary in Bitcoin.
So it'd be like using a credit card, but with Bitcoin.
Exactly. And we're starting to see progress in this area.
Really?
Yeah. Companies like Microsoft and AT&T are already accepting Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
And platforms like Shopify allow businesses to take Bitcoin payments online.
Interesting. But what about the price swings? Wouldn't that make it hard to use Bitcoin, for regular purchases?
Yeah, that's a valid concern and honestly one of the biggest obstacles for Bitcoin to go mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's solutions being developed, like stable coins.
The stable coins.
Yeah, they're pegged to stable assets, like the US dollar.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
they could act as a bridge between the unpredictable world of Bitcoin and the stability we're used to with normal currencies.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, it can make people more comfortable using Bitcoin, without worrying about the price changing so much.
Right. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of potential, but also some challenges to work through.
Absolutely, yeah. And we can't forget about governments and regulations.
Yeah, good point.
They're still trying to figure out how to approach this whole decentralized thing.
Right.
You mentioned El Salvador's move. Some countries are open to it. Others are way more cautious.
Mm-hmm. It's a whole mixed bag.
It is. And each country has to figure out their own way based on
Right.
their situation.
Makes sense. We've been focused on Bitcoin as a currency and investment, but remember that blockchain snippet?
Yeah.
It sounded like blockchain is way bigger than just finance.
Oh, absolutely. Blockchain could totally change lots of industries.
Like what?
Well, imagine supply chains that are completely transparent. Using blockchain.
Oh, okay.
You track everything, reduce fraud.
So no more relying on paperwork and middlemen. You could track it all in real time.
Exactly. And it's not just supply chains. Healthcare could be revolutionized too.
How so?
Think about securely storing and sharing medical records.
Okay, yeah.
It would empower patients and make healthcare more efficient.
It's like blockchain is becoming the foundation of our digital world.
It is, creating more trust, transparency, efficiency.
And what else?
But we're seeing it being used for voting systems,
Mhm.
ID verification, even digital art and collectibles.
Wow, that's a lot. So blockchain could be as big as the internet?
Potentially, yeah. Creating whole new ways of doing business and living our lives online.
That's incredible. But are there any downsides?
Yeah, there are challenges, of course, with any new technology.
Like what?
Well, scalability is one big issue. Current systems can be slow and expensive, especially when there are lots of transactions happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there are security and privacy concerns, too.
Right.
I mean, the blockchain itself is secure, but there can be weaknesses elsewhere in the system.
So it's important to be, cautious and aware of the limitations, right?
Definitely.
But
We need to have serious conversations about how to use blockchain safely and ethically.
good point. It feels like we've just started to explore this whole world.
There's so much more to talk about.
Before we go to the last part of our deep dive, can we circle back to that mystery about Bitcoin's creator?
Ah, yes. Satoshi Nakamoto.
It's like a tech legend. Will we ever know who they are?
It's a question that's fascinated people for years.
Yeah.
There have been so many theories, but no one knows for sure.
Do you think it matters, like, if we knew who they were?
It's a tough question. Some people think it would make Bitcoin seem more legitimate.
Okay.
Others worry it would undermine the whole idea of decentralization.
It's interesting to think about. Does the creator matter more than the creation itself?
It's a great philosophical question.
It is.
But for now, the mystery continues.
Well, let's not get too lost in the mystery. We've got more to cover.
Right.
Let's take a moment and then we'll come back for the final part of our Bitcoin journey.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've gone through Bitcoin's origins, explored blockchain, and even dove into the mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've talked about Bitcoin as currency, as an investment, and as this potential tech revolution.
A lot to unpack for sure.
Definitely. So let's step back for a second and put it all together.
Good idea.
What are the key takeaways? What do we want our listeners to remember?
Yeah, what's the big deal with Bitcoin, really?
Exactly. How would you answer that?
I'd say Bitcoin represents a huge change in how we think about money and power. It's like a challenge to the traditional financial system, offering something decentralized, potentially more fair.
So it's not just the tech, it's the philosophy behind it too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Empowering people, disrupting the way things have always been done.
Right. Bitcoin forces us to ask those big questions about who controls money, how we build trust, and what the future of finance could be.
It really does.
It's a giant social experiment playing out in real time.
With real consequences, yeah.
And we're still just at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. We're still figuring out its potential and how to deal with the challenges.
Speaking of challenges, we talked about volatility, security risks, and regulations. How do those impact Bitcoin's future?
Well, there are definitely real challenges. We can't ignore those.
Right.
But they also push us to innovate, to find solutions.
Okay.
The Bitcoin community is always working on these issues, coming up with new ideas.
Like the Lightning Network.
Exactly. Making transactions faster and cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And there are efforts to make mining more sustainable, addressing the environmental concerns.
That's great. So it's this evolving ecosystem, always adapting.
That's the exciting part.
We talked about how Bitcoin needs more demand to reach that $100,000 prediction.
Right.
What would that look like practically?
Well, we could see more businesses accepting it as payment,
Mm.
making it easier to use in everyday life.
Yeah.
Maybe governments and central banks exploring its use as a reserve asset or something.
So it's about integration, acceptance, both at the small scale and the big picture level.
Precisely. And it's also about educating people, making them aware of Bitcoin's potential.
The more people understand it, the more likely they are to use it.
Exactly.
We've talked a lot about Bitcoin, but let's not forget about blockchain in general.
Right. Blockchain goes way beyond finance.
Yeah, it could change everything from supply chains to healthcare to voting systems.
It's like a foundation for a more transparent, efficient digital world.
And we're just getting started with it.
That's right. There's so much more to discover.
As we wrap up, I'm struck by how much potential Bitcoin has, but also how much uncertainty.
It's a powerful technology. It can disrupt so much, empower people, change how we live online.
But there are risks, too. We have to be careful and responsible with it.
Absolutely. The future of Bitcoin is uncertain, but it's a conversation we need to have.
Yeah, it's worth exploring, worth paying attention to.
Definitely.
And as always, we encourage our listeners to do their own research and form their own opinions.
Learn, stay informed, make up your own mind.
Because ultimately, Bitcoin's future is in the hands of the people who use it.
That's the power of decentralization.
Okay, before we sign off, one last thought to chew on. We talked about Bitcoin's volatility as a bad thing, but could that volatility, combined with its limited supply and decentralized nature, actually make it more stable and secure in the long run?
Wow, that's a great question. It really makes you think about the complexities of this whole thing.
It does. Well, that's it for this deep dive into Bitcoin. Keep those minds curious and keep on diving into those topics that interest you.